What's going on? It's Jonathan Smith. I'm coming to you today with some information about appraisals. So we're going to talk about four things today. We're going to talk about what is an appraisal, why do you need an appraisal, what happens if the appraisal doesn't come out at the same value that you're in escrow for, and then also some common misconceptions about appraisals that I think you would like to know. So the first thing is what is an appraisal? Well, I wrote it down right here from the internet. An appraisal is a valuation of property by the estimate of an authorized person. So basically it is an opinion of value based on someone that has extensive training and practice with valuing properties, called an appraiser. Why do I need an appraisal? Well, generally an appraisal is needed for one thing and one thing only: to satisfy a lender of the value of a property in order for the lender to lend you money. Now, there's some other types of appraisals like tax valuations and insurance purposes, but for now we're talking specifically about appraisals for the purpose of getting a loan on a property. Okay, so what happens if an appraisal comes in at a different value than the value you've already had in contract? So if you're buying a house and the appraisal comes in over what you're in escrow for, well, congratulations. You have equity based on the value that the appraiser gave the property. So for example, if you're buying a property for $200,000 and it came in at $210,000, you got $10,000 of extra equity based on the fact that you bought a property below value. Okay. Now, what happens if it's the other way around? You're buying a property for $200,000 and the appraisal comes in at $190,000. Well, this is a totally different story. See, in California, you are not obligated to pay generally. This is based on the contract, so this is situation dependent, but generally it is based on the purchase price, and then if you have an appraisal contingency, you are not required to pay more than that appraisal price, or you could cancel. So one of three things generally happens when you have an appraisal deficit. Either one, the seller will lower the price in order for the price to match the appraisal. So in this case, they'd lower the price to $190,000. Or the buyer will pay the difference between the appraised price and the purchase price. In this case, they'd bring an extra $10,000 to bridge the gap. Or the third option is something in between, negotiate back and forth. Maybe the seller comes down $5,000 and the buyer comes up $5,000. All right, and then if none of those three things end up happening, well, then you cancel the deal and the buyer goes and finds another home and the seller goes and finds another buyer. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is common misconceptions about appraisals. So, an appraisal is not a home inspection. A home inspection and appraisal are completely different things. A home inspection is looking at all the appliances and the air conditioning and making sure all the plugs work and all of these different things. An appraiser is just walking through and they're looking visually to make sure that everything appears to be in good enough condition for the appraisal report. Another misconception is if you have an appraisal over the contract price, let's say, in that case we talked about earlier, $210,000, the bank's not just going to give you an extra $10,000 in cash and say, hey, good job, here's $10,000. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And another misconception that comes up every once in a while is, let's say you're buying a house for $200,000 and you're putting 10% down, but the appraisal comes in $40,000 above what you have it in contract for. Well, that would give you a 30% equity stake in the property. However, the bank is not going to reduce or remove your PMI based on the appraisal price. They're going to base it based on your down payment versus the purchase price. So in that case, 10%. So you still, would need to, refinance later on or have the PMI removed after 2 years generally. So I hope that helped. If you like it, go ahead and like and subscribe. Comment below if there's any questions you have or you want any clarity on any of the things we talked about, and I look forward to catching you on the next one.